Repetition is what's going to create confidence. It's doing the same thing over and over with a little bit of variation or adding on slowly. So instead of overwhelming or underwhelming, take it one step at a time. So we're on to lesson 2. Let's say if you're doing a series of beginner yoga, what you'll want to do in this class, in this lesson, is to recap the basics. We can maybe go through names again, so not a full introduction, but names, and maybe like one of those little icebreaker type of questions, just a quick one, just so everybody remembers who's who, and you remember who's who as well. And then we can get into the content. So refresh people. Okay, let's practice that breath. Remember that breath practice we did with belly breathing? All right, let's do that. And this is where you could then add on an element. So you do that breath, belly breath, and then you say, okay, today we're going to learn a different breath style. Just we're going to add one style to this, or add a little bit of a change. And today we're going to talk about Ujjayi pranayama, or breath of victory. Not a word that you have to remember, just remember the how to and the concept. And then you share with them, Ujjayi pranayama. That constriction in the back of the throat, the heat that comes with that breath. And you have people practice it. The second section, or the second lesson, I have labeled as heat building, so it makes it a little bit more powerful. So the first class was just a wake up or an introduction to yoga, whereas this one, we're adding a little heat. So with the breath and some of the poses. You may also recap the spinal movements, go through that practice, cat and cow, do a sun salutation, maybe a couple sun salutations, repeating what you did from the first class. And then you can add on, because you will have a little bit more time, add a few poses. Warrior 1, Warrior 2, Reverse Warrior, Side Angle. Add poses that are in the same pose family, just like 3 or 4 in the same pose family. So if you're familiar with Warrior 1, it's this way. This is also a great place to stop and discuss the difference. Warrior 1 is actually an internal hip rotation, hips facing forward, back heels down. It can be actually kind of tough on the back knee and on the body. So Warrior 1 actually isn't necessarily a very happy beginner yoga pose. But Warrior 2, with the hips open, adjust the feet a little bit. Warrior 2 is the base to a lot of our other yoga poses. So talk about that. This is the base leg variation of what you're going to see. Reverse Warrior, right? Side angle, even triangle. But we don't have to get into all of those poses because that can be a bit much. So simply talking about the difference between Crescent Lunge Warrior 1, which is kind of the same, your hips are that internal rotation, and Warrior 2 with the external rotation, making sure that our feet are placed appropriately, knees open, hips open, and then going around and adjusting. What tends to happen in Warrior 2, this is a very base pose, right? Basic pose that we often see in yoga. Knee collapses inward. Leaning forward, back hand is down. I've seen this. And then looking, I don't know, all over the place. So where are you looking? Talk about drishti or gaze. And if you use Sanskrit, maybe just say one word at a time as a definition or to share what that is, rather than assuming people know what that is. So instead of saying, your drishti is over the right fingertips, talk about, okay, your gaze is going to be focused on a point right at your right fingertips, and that's called your drishti. The drishti is there to help you keep your focus, just like your breath and just like the shakiness of your body in the pose. So beginner lessons, a lot more talking. And this doesn't mean beginner yoga is not gentle yoga. That's another thing that I said in the last lesson, that gentle yoga does not equate beginner yoga. Beginner yoga, this is not a gentle yoga pose. This is an active, very active, strong yoga pose. So you will not likely see this in a gentle class. Gentle means literally gentle. You're down on the ground, it's easy, it's calm. But beginner is that introduction to all of it. to active poses, passive poses, warrior poses, seated poses. So we do a few standing. In this lesson, we want to teach people to build heat through warrior 2, pose family of a reverse warrior, side angle perhaps, that's a good one. And that's it. You would add those poses, talk about them, make adjustments. You can add a flow with it if that's helpful for your students and you're a vinyasa yoga teacher and you want to say, hey, now let's try putting those together. We'll do a sun salutation. And then go into the warrior poses. Lift your leg, bend the knees, step forward. Warrior 1 to warrior 2, reverse warrior. Now I'm just doing this as a quick demo, so it's not like I'm actually teaching into it, just showing you that's your flow. Step back. Or you might just do that with one leg at a time. Building heat also means a little bit more core strength. So maybe for your warm-up, let's say cat and cow, you do some spine lengthening and core contracting movements. So you can pick and choose, but it doesn't have to be a whole sequence of creative yoga practice. In fact, stay away from creative yoga sequencing in beginner yoga classes, because most of this already is creative enough for the person who's never done it before. They've never seen it, and it's so important to learn the base poses, the base of what we're doing, and then later on we can add on and be creative, but we need to know the base first. We always have to set the foundation, and the foundation here is spinal warm-ups and breath, downward dog, sun salutation, a few standing poses. And I like to get those done right away in the first couple lessons because when you get down to seated poses, right, seated yoga poses, those are easy. Those are a lot easier, both on the body. There's a lot more base to sit on and not as much of a risk of falling. It's not as balanced. They're not as active. You don't have to engage as much and they're a lot safer. But those ones are very accessible to most people, whereas the ones that are standing poses, it's really good to make sure that alignment is on with those because it's so much easier to be off, right? So once we get down to seated poses, it is a little more simple. And to end the practice, now you don't just go from warrior 2 to shavasana. Make sure that you are maybe repeating some of those spinal movements a little bit. Maybe we do one forward fold, come down onto the back. If there's other poses you want to teach, it might be a simple bridge pose or some twists. Just keep it really simple to end, a cool down. And then recap shavasana again and tell people what to expect here. You might have a different kind of shavasana meditation for class number 2. So we might talk about, well, in my PDF guide I have in the Confident Yogi, this is where we would talk about setting an intention, if that was too much to add into the first lesson. You can talk about that here, or you can personally set an intention for this practice. Today I am strong, or I am beginning where I am right now. I am allowing space in stuck areas. So you can set an intention to have for, maybe it's just shavasana or the meditation that you do at the end. So that's lesson number 2. It's recapping what you learned from lesson 1, plus a couple more poses, a few more little elements, and just continually adding a little bit more on. One bite at a time. It shouldn't be something where you feel like you have to add so much and every single class has to be different. It is more like the wave flow that I have in my program, Focused Flow. A wave flow. What is a wave flow? Not something that you're going to teach in your beginner classes, but a wave flow is like this. If you pick a group of, let's say, 4 yoga poses, and you do them in sequence. You do the poses in your sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you stop, you have it in between. Maybe it's a vinyasa flow, or you hold in child's pose or down dog. We'll do those same 4 poses again, but maybe in like 1 or 2 of the poses, you add an intensification or a different variation. And then you take that pause, hold on. So the wave starts small, and then gets a little bigger. And then the next time around you do it again, you might add a different intensification, or you intensify the other poses so the wave is even bigger. And that's similar with this 6-part series, is we always recap what we did, the basics, and part of what we did maybe the week before, and then we add on. I hope this is helpful, and you still want to continue making people feel welcome, smile, answer any questions, and enjoy the process. So enjoy teaching beginner yoga, and I will see you in the next lesson.